Elon Musk has faced many threats to humanity, but he could be in for his biggest challenge yet. Elon recently took the world by storm when he tweeted he is increasingly convinced that corporate ESG is the devil incarnate. Simply put, an ESG score is a measure of a company's long-term exposure to environmental, social, and governance risks that are frequently ignored during traditional financial evaluations. These risks include issues such as energy efficiency, worker safety, and board diversity, all of which can have serious financial ramifications. A high ESG rating indicates that a company manages its ESG risks well in comparison to its peers, whereas a low ESG rating indicates that the company has a higher unmanaged ESG risk exposure. The S&P 500 ESG Index, which was launched in 2019, measures the stock value of some of the largest companies by market capitalization listed in the United States that meet certain sustainability criteria. Its scope is similar to that of the original S&P 500 Index, but it aims to assist investors in selecting companies based on their commitment to strong ESG goals. Now, here's the kicker. Despite all the good it does for the environment, Tesla has a poor ESG rating. And if that's not crazy enough for you, the controversial oil giant ExxonMobil was listed in the top 10 for ESG companies this year, while Elon's Tesla was straight up kicked out of the list. Elon took to Twitter to express his frustration with the news that his company had dropped out of the S&P 500 ESG Index. ESG is a scam. It has been weaponized by phony social justice warriors, he wrote. Elon also shared memes ridiculing the inclusion of 6 oil companies onto the index and claiming that a good ESG score equates to a company's compliance with the leftist agenda. Certain sectors have questioned the concept of ESG, mostly because it allows companies and investors to escape prosecution for socially irresponsible activities or investments. According to Bloomberg, the world's largest ESG-focused exchange-traded fund has nearly 3.1% of its assets invested in the oil and gas sector, the same sector that is speeding up the climate crisis. The UN may have introduced ESG ratings, but today, the World Economic Forum is one of ESG's biggest supporters. The World Economic Forum, or WEF, is an international organization based in Geneva, Switzerland, that brings together political and business leaders each year to discuss major issues affecting the global economy. Political, economic, social, and environmental concerns are just a few examples. Klaus Schwab, a business professor at the University of Geneva, founded the WEF in 1971. It was originally known as the European Management Forum, but in 1987 it changed its name to the World Economic Forum in order to expand its vision to include offering a platform for reconciling international conflicts. The WEF is perhaps best known for its annual World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Switzerland. This event attracts business and political leaders from around the world on a regular basis for a series of discussions about global issues. The membership of the WEF is a cross-section of the global elite from the private and public sectors and includes some of the world's most prominent CEOs, diplomats, celebrities, media personalities, government officials, religious leaders, and union representatives. The World Economic Forum's mission is based on what is known as stakeholder theory, a term that we should all be wary about. According to stakeholder theory, while the goal of a private sector entity is to increase profits for its shareholders, the organization must view the rest of society as having a stake in the company's actions. Key decisions must take into account stakeholders such as employees, customers served by the company, and the local and global community. The World Economic Forum is headquartered in Switzerland and has offices in New York, Beijing, Tokyo, San Francisco, and Mumbai. The COVID-19 pandemic forced some changes to the annual WEF meetings, which have recently become a huge media sensation. The World Economic Forum and its annual meeting in Davos has been criticized in the past. The conference and the organization itself have been criticized for their corporate capture of global and democratic institutions, as well as systemic whitewashing initiatives, the public cost of security, the organization's tax-exempt status, ambiguous decision processes, as well as membership criteria, a lack of financial transparency, and the environmental footprint of their annual meetings. Following public outcry, the Swiss national government decided in February 2021 to lower its annual contributions to the WEF. Rutger Bregman, a Dutch historian, went viral 3 years ago during a Davos panel when he called out billionaires for tax evasion. Bregman stated in a video that has now been viewed almost 11 million times that the primary cause of inequality is a global failure to effectively combat tax avoidance. It's like I'm at a firefighters convention where no one is allowed to talk about water, Bregman said at the time. This isn't rocket science. We've got to talk about taxes. That's all. Taxes, taxes, and more taxes. In reference to the previous WEF theme, the Great Reset, hundreds of thousands of posts have circulated on social media in recent years, many of which appear to claim that the global elite was planning to use the coronavirus to cause total economic collapse. We have been the target of misinformation campaigns, as have many other organizations, and that is something we are actively working to address, said Sadia Zahidi, managing director of the World Economic Forum. We trust facts, science, evidence, and expertise. And that is what the 100 or so experts gathered at this meeting, along with business and political leaders, are going to provide. Protesters, activists, and people on the forefront of inequality have challenged the WEF over its empty rhetoric, accusing Davos of being a symbol of a failed era that should be abandoned. According to a report released recently by the global charity Oxfam, 573 people became billionaires during the coronavirus pandemic, at a rate of 1 every 30 hours. According to the brief, titled Profiting from Pain, 263 million more people will fall into extreme poverty this year, at a rate of 1 million every 33 hours. Billionaires are arriving in Davos to celebrate an incredible surge in their fortunes. The pandemic and now the steep increases in food and energy prices have, simply put, been a bonanza for them, said Gabriella Butcher, executive director at Oxfam. Decades of progress on extreme poverty are now in reverse, and millions of people are facing impossible rises in the cost of simply staying alive, she added. The WEF is bankrolled by its own membership, which includes industry leaders as well as people from all walks of life, such as celebrities, journalists, and others willing to pay annual premiums and meeting fees to attend. WEF partners include some of the biggest companies in technology: Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, pharmaceuticals, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, food such as Unilever, the Coca-Cola Company, Nestle, and oil like Saudi Aramco, Shell, Chevron, and BP. With such a star-studded lineup, it's pretty obvious why the WEF is so powerful. 6 regional meetings are held in developing countries in Africa, East Asia, and Latin America, but the annual conference in Davos, Switzerland is the focal point for all members. WEF meetings are believed to heavily influence corporate and public sector decision-making by introducing new issues, trends, and organizations for discussion to members and the general public. The concept that the global economic, political, and social order must undergo a great reset in the face of technological progress, environmental concerns, and the economic destruction caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has become a major theme in recent WEF publications and events. These conversations, meetings, and themes are inspired in part by Klaus Schwab's 2020 book, COVID-19: The Great Reset. The Great Reset proposes numerous reforms addressing economic, societal, geopolitical, environmental, and technological concerns. The reset advocates for massive wealth redistribution and a reduction in competition, creative destruction, and economic expansion in favor of collective goals, government control, and social welfare. In its advocacy for structural reforms and redistribution, the agenda emphasizes various social justice themes. As you would expect, the Great Reset has sparked considerable debate as the agenda's implications have become public. Those who support free enterprise and oppose radical social reconstruction have united in their opposition. There have also been several obvious errors that have resulted in the deletion or re-editing of some WEF publications and social media posts. According to critics, WEF statements imply that under the Great Reset, people will own nothing and have no privacy. It's even been claimed that it portrayed COVID-19's economic devastation of urban economies as a positive improvement, which is downright villainous. Small protests are held in Davos most years, organized by the local Green Party to protest what has been dubbed as Fat Cats in the Snow meetings, an ironic term coined by U2's Bono. Fun fact, Bono has actually attended and been a keynote speaker at multiple WEF conferences, demonstrating the organization's scope. According to some critics, women have been significantly underrepresented at the WEF. Between 2001 and 2005, the proportion of women attending the WEF increased from 9% to 15%. Recently, in 2020, female attendance at the WEF increased to 24%. Several women have since shared their personal impressions of the Davos meeting in media articles, emphasizing that the issues were more profound than a Davos quota for female leaders or a diversity and inclusion session. In this regard, the World Economic Forum has filed legal complaints against at least 3 investigative articles written by reporters Katie Gibbons and Billy Kenber and published in the British newspaper The Times in March 2020. In a controversial interview in December 2021, Catholic Cardinal Gerard Ludwig Mueller criticized people like WEF founder Schwab for sitting on the throne of their wealth and being unaffected by the everyday difficulties and sufferings people face, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. On the contrary, such technocrats would see crises as a chance to advance their agendas. He was particularly critical of the power such people would wield over others, as well as their acceptance of concepts like transhumanism. This year, geopolitics dominated discussions in Davos more than ever before. As the war in Ukraine rages on, food shortages threaten lives, and uncertainty over the US-China relationship grows. What was surprising was the lack of emphasis on major economic issues during the entirety of the conference. Almost everyone agreed in private that the combination of inflation, stock market declines, Chinese lockdowns, and the growing possibility of a major global recession is contributing to a troubling economic outlook. But despite this, the agenda for this year was light on the discussion of these issues. In comparison, following the global financial crisis in 2009, the forum was similarly pessimistic but intensely focused on economic recovery plans and how the globalized system could respond to the shock. During a cost of living crisis, a war in Europe, increased inequality, and people becoming more polarized and disenfranchised, not to mention the heightened conspiracy theories surrounding the forum, many politicians wouldn't dare be seen in Davos this year. The effectiveness of the forum's format is also questionable, especially considering that those most affected by these issues are unfortunately excluded from the discussion. Elon is right. Aside from crappy ESG standards and conspiracy theories, something very dodgy is going on in the world of global governance. If you value your right to public health, privacy, access to healthy food, or democratic representation, be extremely cautious of the term stakeholder capitalism when it appears at WEF summits going forward. Support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. We really appreciate it. Until next time, welcome to the future.